Hi guys, welcome to our little demo day. My name's Lindsay, I'm the owner of Town & Country Timber Flooring, and a large part of our business over the 40 odd years or more that we've been in business is the DIY market. Myself, I'm a DIY person, I own and built my own house and it was very rewarding. And one of the things that really made a big difference to me in the quality of work that I got was getting the right information. Just knowing the right way to go about it, from the floor preparation to all the other things you come across, is what this little demo is all about. So with this floor today, you always check the subfloor in the direction that the boards are going. You don't have to worry about so much sideways, because the joins on the side of the boards will allow the floor to fold with the contour of the floor. But with the length of the boards, that's where the floor holds what they call surface tension. So that's where you will feel sponginess, if there's going to be any. So this is a 2.4 metre straight edge. We try to get our floors within 3 mil over 3 metres of flatness. So if you're using a spirit level for this, put masking tape over the bubble, otherwise it'll drive you nuts. Because we're using the word level as in flatness, not as in spirit dead flat level. So with this, we'll identify that there's a hump there that needs to be ground out. Where it looks like the floor comes back to the average height, we'll put a mark. And then basically you follow that along and you end up basically doing dot to dot. And you do that, you follow that all the way it goes across the room. And then after you've done your little spot marks, you can just go back and join the dots and just mark it as a H for a hump, or if it's a low patch, you just put an L in it, and that means you know where to grind the humps out. Then after you ground the humps out, you will check the low spots to see whether they've come within the standard or whether you need to fill them. So you can see here, there's no more rocking, it's flattened those joins. Here, it's nice and firm that way. But on this particular end joint over here, we can see that there's still a considerable amount of rocking. Okay, now that we're happy with the subfloor level, we move on to undercutting the door frames, the architraves, or anything the floor has to go under to have expansion. So the easiest way to do that is to cut off a piece of the flooring, and then we'll cut a piece of underlay and glue that to the flooring so we know exactly what the floor height's going to be. So what we do now is we'll just cut a bit of underlay. I'm using double-sided tape, you can use masking tape. Not everyone's got double-sided tape lying around. And that just gives you a real easy flat base for putting up against the wall or architraves wherever we're going to undercut, which we'll move on to next. So we've got our template, which is going to give us the exact height we need for the floor. We need a chisel to chisel out the piece that we're cutting off. A multi-tool is the easiest way for the DIYers to do undercut. It's got a nice little sharp blade, and of course the hammer. The trick with the multi-tool, these blades, if you just try and cut straight in, you'll just be smoking, have smoke going everywhere and not achieving much. When using a multi-tool, There's no what they call set on the teeth. They don't have an offset, so it's clearing the sawdust. So you have to move it sideways to manually clear the sawdust. So you just hold this flat. It's important to not be leaning back or pushing forward on the blade. Just have it running flat with the floor. And then your floor fits nicely under there, like the architrave's been fitted on top. So here I've planed a hump out of the floor, but right up against the door frame where your trim's going to go, if I don't make sure I flatten that, the trim's going to sit up and make the floor want to sit up here and here. So the easiest thing to do here is just with the multi-tool. Now the trim's going to sit nice and flat. Okay, now we've got all the subfloor preparation done, we've got the floor vacuum. I like to cut the trims for the doorways, because when you're laying the underlay, you can then cut the underlay to where it's going to meet the trim, so that you don't have to try and muck around and do it after you've laid the floor. So you want to take care doing this, because the floor is always going to look neat. But when you see the trims cut nice and tight to the door architraves and door frames or whatever they're going to be, it just makes the job look that much nicer. So it's worth just putting that bit of effort in. So measure as many times as you need to and check until you're very happy that you've got it right. Got it right. It's good because it's not loose, it's nice at both ends. So now we're going to get ready to install the floor. Now, especially as a DIY, it's easier to start along the longest, straightest wall and in the open area, because it's going to give you the least amount of trouble, and by the time you get across to the more difficult places like around door frames, and especially finishing off under a door frame, you're going to have a much better idea how the floor works and how it goes together and how to problem solve those more difficult areas. So an easy way to unroll it, get the roll started, then just pull back. You don't have to try and have it in perfect position. Lift up the sheet and just walk towards the wall. And repeat the process. Okay, some of the tools you need, a real handy tool are knee pads first of all. You can get them from floor covering shops like, or Bunnings is actually an easy place to get them. The edges of these floors when they're cut are quite sharp, so a pair of, I like to wear the fingerless gloves, because normally you're going to get cuts on the palms in these areas, so, and you still got your fingers free for pencil and hot handling boards easy. Your sounding knife, hammer. This is a quick step installation kit. It comes with a tapping block that's specially designed to fit over the edge of the board, so that when you're tapping it, you're tapping on that face and you're not damaging the top edge of the board, you're not breaking the locking system. and it's conveniently just the right size for tapping in the ends of the boards if you need to as well. When setting out a floor for laminate or timber, you don't need to worry about centering the boards in the room so you've got the same size joins on each side. If you were doing parquetry or something with a pattern and a border, then you have to worry about that. But with the boards, you're more concerned about that you haven't got a small fill that's going to run down the side of the skirting and look out of place and make the walls look more uneven than they really are. So it's good to try and keep the fills around the edges to 30mm wide or more, and that way it just looks balanced. It's much easier to work with and the job looks more natural. So on the first row of boards, you will see on the back edge of the board there's a long tongue at the front and a short tongue at the back. So I trim that off so that I know that I've got a full 10mm gap between the top edge of the board and the plaster wall or whatever the wall is. So there's many ways you can trim that off. You can plane it off, you can cut it off with a circular saw. I tend to just do it with a Stanley knife, and I just go along and trim it off like so. And that way, when I put the board up against the wall, such as like that, you've just gained that extra 3 or 4mm expansion. So hold the board up like I am, bring the joints together, hold pressure on the board this way, and just drop it down, and it locks it into place. As you can see, we need to cut a little fill piece. At the moment, I've got the flooring tight to the end wall, so I need to allow 20mm gap here. So that'll be 85mm. Always make sure you cut off the right end. Once you cut off at one end, you start laying the floor with it the other. If we do that in this case, because I've only cut a small piece off, the next board joint would be too close to the previous joint. Now you want to have a nice gap between your end joins. You want around 250 to 300mm gap to the previously laid board. That not only looks better, but it actually strengthens the floor, because the more you stagger the boards, the stronger your floors will hold together, and the better it is, the better it will perform. Just hold your hand on it. You're not trying to hit hard, just small taps. And you always work from the end of the board back to the joint you've laid, because then you're pulling this board tighter into this joint. If you start here and start tapping that way, you jump that joint apart. So go up the end, and just little taps like that. You don't need to use any force, and then it's nice and flat. So you can see now we've got our packers in place. So I've got one at the end, I've got a series along the side wall, and I've got another packer in the other end. And when you put packers at each end and on the side and lock them all in, it's like you've nailed the floor into place. It's not going to move around, because then you can confidently start laying. You don't need to keep packing every row that you do, because you know you've already got the control joints locked into place. Okay, so now we're cutting the last row of boards along this wall. So you can measure with a tape measure and transfer the measurements on here and draw a line. A quick way of doing it is tempering it. So what you do is line the board up directly over the previous laid one. Get another board, turn it back to front, put it up against the wall, and you can see that the wall isn't totally consistent, and then you just do a pencil line. If you want to get it more accurate, you can go back so it follows the absolute contour of the wall. There's your pencil, there's your cut line. Put the end in first, drop the board down. Using the pull tool, which is out of your installation kit, come to the other end, hold down on the, it's got protective pads so it's not denting the floor. So just hold some weight down. Once again, you work from this end back towards the board you already laid. And you want to hit just nice and flat. You don't want to hit down like this because then you could dent the floor here. So hitting it nice and flat. Tap. What that tap does, it makes sure it fully engages the locking system so the board isn't sitting up on an angle. Just keep repeating the process. Just a nice bead of glue with a zigzag pattern. Now it's really important that when you're putting the trim in that you don't get any glue come out the front side of the trim, because if glue comes up on the front side of the trim and gets in this cavity here, it'll glue the board to the trim and you've got no expansion or contraction. And the other thing is when you're running your floor under a trim, you only really need to run it under to about this, where these rib lines start, because that gives the floor heaps of expansion and contraction. Okay, so what we do now, because we can't just roll it in as we normally did, we put it in under the edge of the trim first. And then we pull it into the end locking system, and then slide it across as far as we can, and then use the tapping block to tap it home. So we've got heaps of gap and we've got heaps of coverage. We know we aren't going to have a problem. Slide the end joint in, slide the whole board down together, and then just tap it home. Okay, we've found the row we've been looking for all day, the last row. So what we're doing is I've laid the second last row, but as you can see, it's not very easy to get into the trim. This one I'm going to be able to, but often if there's an architrave on here, you will not be able to get it in and drop it down. But in this case, I actually will be able to. Normally what you have to do is we would cut the last row in, unlock the second last row, put the last row in and lock it all together and push it hard up against the back of the trim in the wall, put the second last board in and pull them back both together with that pull tool.
Don't forget to like and subscribe for more helpful content.